Welcome to our review of Split Fiction. This is the first for us. We don't normally do this, but we felt compelled to make a review of this game together because by its very nature, it is a co-op game, so we figured, why don't we do a co-op review? So, let's just dive right in. Levi,
sure.
Take us away.
So, Split Fiction came out this year, 2025. It's made by Hazelight Studio out of Stockholm, Sweden. They have a few other games. All of their games are co-op games. This is sort of their bread and butter. Their previous game was It Takes Two. It won Game of the Year in 2021. Before that, they had a game called A Way Out, which was sort of a sleeper hit. And then they also had another dual stick game called Brothers, which could be played two-player or single-player. So they don't have a huge repertoire, but every time they put out stuff, they put out really unique, specialized stuff. And Split Fiction is no different. This is a highly stylized co-op couch play that we don't really see very often these days.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting concept too. I wasn't super familiar with the company as a whole. I knew about It Takes Two, but I haven't played it. I've seen a lot of it, but I haven't actually tried it. So this is kind of my first foray.
For me too. I did not play It Takes Two. I had a lot of people tell me to play it, but it is hard to organize a dedicated second player.
Yeah.
To always show up, to always be like there. So,
well, that might be our next co-op mission then, because I had quite a bit of fun with this. So
yeah,
let's dive right into some. We're gonna do this like pros and cons. We'll say what we liked about this game first, and then the few things we didn't like, and then we will talk about the final hour or so stretch of the game without trying not to spoil.
Try not to spoil it
as much as we can, because yeah, it's something you need to experience. So why don't we start off with some pros? So Levi, kick us off. Like, what do you like about this game?
First and foremost, I think for a game that's so varied, it has pretty tight controls. For the most part, I say the most part because we did run into a few issues late game where I just felt like the controls were not responding. Whereas leading up to this point, I didn't have any issues, so that was a little frustrating. But in terms of like platforming and jumping and double jump and dash, very snappy, very responsive, and you know, if you can't do that right, then your game's gonna crumble. So this game, at least, it got that very, very well done.
Yeah, I would 100% agree there.
I would say also the art direction is really cool. Due to the nature of it being one character's entire persona is sci-fi and heavy future, and the other is very fantasy and sort of Lord of the Rings inspired stuff. It makes for some great art direction in each level, and really cool color palettes are used. So this game is very colorful.
Yeah, beautiful game.
Yeah.
Art direction is really stunning.
I would also say it has some really interesting co-op scenarios. I don't think they ever reused anything. I think we always did something new every time, or something was built upon another thing as you like go through a chapter. But there was never a point where we were doing something from a previous chapter. Everything is new every time you play another section. Yeah.
I think most of your pros are also my pros.
Yeah.
One really cool thing is that I guess it could be a bit of a con too if you want it to last longer, but the side stories were a nice little diversion from the main levels and provide a lot of like really cool gameplay styles and alternatives. Like one time you're doing a twin stick side scroller shooter, and then the next you're doing a little scenario where you're pigs. You know, there's all kinds of like...
There's an early one where you're pigs, and it's very strange, and, you know, one of the pigs farts. Its ability is farting, and farting's never not funny. You know, and in the end, you're turned into sausages, and you have to prepare yourselves in buns. It's all
you have to put condiments on.
Surreal.
It's a very bizarre situation.
Yeah. but it made us laugh. I think that was the other thing. Like this game genuinely had us laughing a lot. In terms of the side story sections too, one in particular I thought was really cool was this exploding sun in the distance, and
Oh
we had
yeah.
to use these panels along the way to block the rays of sun blasting by, and that was really tense, but also like had some fun puzzle elements and teamwork. It sort of encompassed everything in the game with side scrolling platforming and 3D area platforming. It was really cool. So I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, one thing this game does really well that I think highlighted specifically with us two as, um, let's just say we're not the same type of players. We each have our strengths and advantages, and that was on full display in some scenarios.
Yeah,
Sometimes I would just blow through something, and you'd be like
I'm
falling all over the place,
stumbling.
and then you'd be like, "No, no, Hank, you gotta just look at the color." And I couldn't figure out like the simplest puzzle. So I think it's a good compliment to people's different skill sets.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I didn't find it to be an overly challenging game,
No.
which is good. I'm not looking for a game like Portal 2 is like sort of the standard of like you will be angry at your other co-op partner when playing that game. I didn't feel like we ever hit that point. Maybe in the section with the canoe, or in the section where you're on that big plate. And it's essentially the canoe segment again, but we were shifting down a hill on this big plate, and that was a little frustrating, to say the least.
Yeah, because you can't tell. I mean, I was doing the correct moves, but I don't know what my partner was doing, right? So like it's very confusing.
Yeah. I thought the puzzles overall were, decent.
Yeah.
Not too challenging, nothing ever particularly difficult, but still felt good to complete them. So that was nice. There's lots of sort of fun, non-sequential, like not important moments in this game that they just kind of let you do. And us as gamers, I think we're so programmed to be like, oh, everything's got to give us a trophy.
Must
Oh,
do
everything
something.
has a purpose. And no, that seesaw, it doesn't have a purpose.
Nope.
We're just using the seesaw.
Yeah.
Turning, like getting the wand in town and turning people into wheels of cheese. That's just there for fun. Like there's lots of these little moments that have no value other than to just kind of be a sort of fun, joyous moment.
Yep. One day you're running as a dragon, and next you're eating fish as a dragon. You know, there's
Yeah.
such variety.
Let's see, what else do I got here? I felt like the boss fights are always pretty good. Maybe a little dragged on. Each boss fight, they did a really good job of. Virtually every boss fight is a 3-phase, but if you fail, they're very generous with giving you checkpoints,
very generous,
or
yeah.
not making you start from the beginning, because that would have been incredibly frustrating. So I actually didn't find the boss fights too bad. I think maybe like 80% of them were relatively good. There was one boss fight near the end that you and I think it was worse than the final boss fight
Yeah.
of the game. It's a previous boss fight. It really was mired with issues of control lag. Like I was hitting buttons and things just weren't happening, and there was just a lot going on screen.
That's that particular let's dovetail right into our cons then, because
Yeah.
that was one of my few but major cons, was this one section. It happened a bunch of times throughout the game where the inputs they weren't quite timely, or you were
Timely
pressing
is
the
a good
button
way.
and it wasn't doing what you needed to be doing. So this particular boss, it was saying to tap really quickly on the triangle button or whatever the top button is on your
Yes.
controller, which we were both doing. But in reality, you needed to be
ball
like
for you.
in sync and tapping
It
back
needed
and
to be
forth.
like
and-
either we were alternating our taps, like tap, 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 tap. But for the majority of the game, every time they present this QuickTime event, you're just expected
quick
to
as possible.
feverishly tap the button, which makes sense. So to get to a boss fight where near the end of the fight, it all comes down to this moment, and we just kept dying over and over again, doing the thing that the game had been previously saying, this is right, this is how you do
Yeah.
it.
And
So
what it's
yeah,
currently telling you to do.
to do
So
it,
you're like,
but
what
it's
the
like,
heck is
okay,
going on here?
yeah, and I found that to be frustrating. And in that same fight, my character has like a magnetic repulsion ability that gets used a lot. And for the most part, clicking R2, it would trigger immediately and it would power on. But during this boss fight in particular, there was some sort of lag input or cooldown that was happening because it just wasn't reacting at the time I'm pressing the button, and either nothing happens or it was like seconds of delay, and I was getting pretty frustrated with that. So I would say, I don't know, maybe there was some lag input, or maybe we were just rushing it. But again, that goes against the point of the game teaching us up to this point.
Yeah.
So that fight was where I sort of said to you, yeah, I don't know, this is the first time I felt not happy with this part of the game.
Which, if you make it to this point in the game, it's pretty far in. So
Yeah,
like,
you're like
to have,
80%
to
way
have
through the
this
game.
part be annoying and be pretty much almost fine up until this point is, these are almost nitpicks at this point, not really like full-on problems, right?
But it would make sense early in the game if they were like trying to weed out things.
Yeah.
But to have the entire game function a certain way, and then you get to that very end segment, and then it's not working quite the same way, I don't think that's great. Like, I think that's a pretty big issue.
Well, yeah, I'm on the fence. I'm gonna fence sit on this one because I had so much fun with the game overall that
Yeah,
to me,
of course. I'm not saying this is an overall reason to detract from it. I'm just saying maybe late in development they sort of didn't quite tweak it the way it needed to be, as tight as the start of the game.
What I think this made both of us kind of roll our eyes and cringe so hard is the fact that this entire game is about writers who are going to get published at this big tech company, and then the big evil tech company is actually stealing their ideas by putting them into a machine that will siphon all their creative ideas out of their head, and then they can repackage it and sell it. The problem is the writing of the actual game and the characters is really bad.
So bad. It's so
Like surprisingly bad.
written like a high school student. And even then, I took a writer's class in high school, and I genuinely think I write better dialogue than what was in this game. They'd say very hilarious statements like, so obviously it's called split fiction. One person is the sci-fi person and one person is the fantasy person. That's established pretty quickly. And yet we still had these moments where like they'd come through the portal from the sci-fi world into the fantasy world, and then the girl from the sci-fi world would go, "Oh, I guess this is your world?" Like, yes. Are you kidding me? No, this is your world. This is your sci-fi world. Now it's like totally like this statement didn't need to be in here. I don't even think the player, like, do they assume the players are dumb?
At this point I'm not even sure. And like I played as this character. That was my
Yeah.
character, and
Mio. Also, can we just talk about the fact that I think Mio is a terrible name?
it is awful. I mean,
And
Mio
like,
is a drink
Mio
additive,
and
so-
Zoe. I feel like they just took the sounds and they made them the opposite.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they could have been like Bink Boink. That would have been just as
Bink
good.
boink and ding dong.
Yeah. Wow, the Adventures of Clink Clunk. That's amazing.
So I think we can all agree that the writing, hilariously, ironically, is maybe one of the worst elements of this game in terms of overall just how it's written and how silly and cheesy it is.
we're definitely not alone in this regard. Of all the
Yeah.
reviews I've watched, almost everybody points out how comically bad the writing is for a
Yeah.
game that is about writers.
Yeah. And I get
mean,
it.
at this point, I almost have to think it's on purpose to be this bad, but you know what? Who knows?
And I understand that it is a vessel only in the sense that they definitely thought of these concepts first
Yeah.
and were like, wouldn't it be cool to have alternating realities? And you're jumping between the two. On paper, as a concept, that's cool. How you get it to work in a functioning linear story, I can see why it's a little, ham-fisted, if you will. And this game is definitely ham-fisted in terms of how they're just getting you from point A to point B, and there's no real explanation for it. And what explanation there is like made up scientific jargon from this machine. So
Yeah.
the writing is just, it's bad. I will
Yes.
say that.
And I mean, to have an evil boss be the generic corporation, and then the corporation have a group of board of
They have
directors,
board members with the My Pillow guy, and the whole board member scenes always made me laugh because I'm curious as to what the board members were funding or what they're aware that this corporation, it's a huge corporation clearly, and like they've never seen the machines or they do know of the machines. So are they just as evil as the other CEO because they suddenly grew a conscience in these like video calls? It's all very like, you don't want to think about it too much because it all falls apart the
Very
moment
schlocky.
you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that at some point they would have been like, "Huh, what does our company do?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's stealing, essentially. They're paid to steal concepts.
And they seem a little too concerned with like, "Oh my God, the machine is not working. You must shut it down." And he's like, "No, I must finish what I started." And you're like, "But why?
Why? Just shut it down and make a new company. You clearly have the money." Again, to think about it too much is the problem.
Yeah, we're making it into a bigger deal than we ever thought in while playing
and so that sort of encompasses the entirety of like the writing and the characters. Like Zoe and Mio are essentially written as polar opposites strictly to be polar opposites and sort of help each other with their slightly different yet slightly the same problems. And the final boss is the CEO, and I just sort of laugh at the idea, like that just seems so silly to me. Like he's like a Steve Jobs-esque.
Yeah.
He even wears like the Steve Jobs look, and it's just sort of very silly and tongue-in-cheek. So all of that's very, I don't know, don't take it seriously. And I guess like it's a con in that it's not written well, but we're not here for the story.
Yeah. I mean, technically, we're 100% here for the story because that is exactly what we're doing the whole time.
It's so weird. I don't have a lot of cons either. Mainly, like there is a lot of moments or homages to other games, and at times it felt like they were going through a checklist of like they love this, so they got to put it in, and sometimes it was like a little silly. They did a couple Crash Bandicoot run towards camera segments, and there's like a snowboarding segment that's very like half baked. So I felt a little checklisty in that sense. Near the late game, I felt it became its own. But my biggest gripe with the late game is that you get these dragons, which is really cool. Right? We get these dragons; they're really great, and Hank gets one, and I get one. And so you get into the area and you start to figure out what we can do. And Hank's jumping up and gliding and flying and shooting acid. And I was like, man, that's so cool. And my dragon rolls. That's it. He's got wings. He's bigger. He's bulkier. He does not fly. He does not have fire breath or anything. My sole purpose is to spiral the dragon like a roll charge. And it was just so frustrating. And as the level goes on, you sort of evolve and get like more things. No, my character does not. And I sort of think Zoe throughout the entire game got the lesser of all abilities.
I am going to have to concur.
Yeah,
My abilities were a hell of a lot of fun.
because like when you're in the fantasy world, Zoe turns into a fairy who can, I don't know, fly far distances, but that's it. Or you're like a tree person that turns the knobs, you know.
Yeah. Whereas me,
You were
I get to turn
climbing and
into like
smashing and
yeah,
traversing and doing all the fun stuff, or you were swimming and like moving the parts in the water. And I just felt like overall, Mio's Mio gets the more abilities and things to do versus Zoe.
yeah. The only problem is you have to put up with being Mio as a human, and she is a real downer.
Yes. And to go back to the writing, Mio's character is incredibly, I will say, some pretty insufferable for like 90% of the game.
Yeah.
And obviously, she has her moment where she turns around and sort of, becomes a bit more lighthearted. But man, it is for a 12-hour game. She's depressing and a downer for about 10 of it, and it starts to get to the player.
Yeah. The two trauma princesses are making their way through their own brains here.
Yep,
That's all I'm going to say about that.
yep. And I guess we can't really talk about the final part of the game, but all of these are sort of made up with the final part, because the final part of the game really takes the concept of having two realities simultaneously playing at the same time, whereas through most of the game you're in one or the other. Near the end they do an incredible ability of somewhat combining them, and I can't really say more than that because there's a lot of development trickery going on, and it actually reminded me a lot of Ratchet and Clank,
Rift
the
apart.
newest one, Rift Apart,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of jumping between full rendered environments, like at a really fast pace, and it just had some just incredible sort of cool encounter one after the other.
Yeah, and it's like a solid, I would say, hour and 20
It's
minutes
an
of like
hour
full
of
on.
non-stop action.
Yeah.
Like you cannot really stop.
This game, and a lot of games, their endings are like, they're good, but this really sticks the landing
Yeah.
and really brings it home and makes
Yeah.
all of the gripes that we've talked about mean almost nothing. And like, you're like, just thumbs up, kind of smiles all the way. I fucking loved it.
Yeah, it was a great time all
Yeah.
around. Like, yes, we had complaints about silly things like writing, but in terms of a game and the spectacle, this game absolutely knocked it out of the park. I would say this game probably wins some awards this year, assuming people don't forget about it come December, for probably art direction and some game design. Action adventure. Certainly not for writing.
If this game wins for writing, I'm
We're
revolting.
doomed.
I'm protesting.
But is it game of the year? Maybe.
Hard to say, you know what? Because I know I haven't played It Takes Two, but I have seen a lot of videos, and a lot of the concepts in this game are evolved from that game, and this
Yes.
is like I guess, the better version or the evolution of that. So I don't think it's game of the year,
No.
unless this year really, really sucks. But
Well, this is supposed to be a GTA 6 year, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
R.I.P.
all in all,
other games.
I would highly recommend if you can find another person, couch co-op or somebody online that wants to dedicate their time.
Yep.
This game's around 10 to 12 hours long, and it's a joy to play from start to finish.
And you can also play it for free. You don't even need to buy it. So if you don't even want to buy it, go on Reddit, see if somebody needs a partner, and
Yep.
get
They'll
going.
send over their code, and you're able to do it, which is nice. Didn't work for Hank, but hey.
Okay, that's a whole separate video. That's an EA problem, not a
Yeah.
not a game.
That's
problem.
not a hazelight
No.
issue.
I'll hold it against them. Anyways, let's finish this off with a little outro of our time as dragons. So enjoy, go play the game, and thanks for watching. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
See you later.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Release.
There's got to be a slight delay then, because
There is, for sure,
Yeah.
because I'm deliberately holding back. Get on, bitches. He's a big boy.